So if you want to know how CUBEATZ makes crazy samples for Travis Scott and Drake, this is the perfect video for you. Yo guys, what's up and welcome to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how I made a crazy sample and a crazy beat in the style of Travis Scott and Drake. And since For All the Dogs from Drake drops next week, I have to do this tutorial. And I will show you how I made a crazy beat to the sample as well, and how I placed like these hi-hats and how I made like the 808 pattern and everything else. So yeah, make sure to stay till the end, and I will show you my mastering chain for my samples as well, so don't miss out on that. And if you want the new kit I just dropped, which is called the Exoplanet kit, I'll put the link in the description and in the comments. It has 50 phrases, 50 one-shots, 30 samples, 11 textures, 15 RC20 presets, and 15 full drum loops without the 808. So it's basically an all you need for making samples, and it's a perfect kit if you just started making samples. So yeah, don't miss out on that. I would really appreciate that. Use code LucaLand15 for 15% off. And with that being said, please don't forget to leave a like, please don't forget to leave a comment, and please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications. I'd really appreciate that. And with that being said, yeah guys, let's go. And the first thing I did for the sample, I picked Omnisphere and I picked the Celeste Tone White preset. It's a pretty nice bell for these type of samples, so if you have Keyscape Creative, make sure to use that bell because it's a really nice bell, as I said, for these samples. And the first thing I did was laying on these pretty simple chords in a C minor harmonic scale, and as you can see, it's the harmonic scale because I went from a C to a B, which is usually not in the like main minor scale, but for the harmonic scale it is, and it gives the sample such a nice like dark tone and dark feeling, and it always works to get your samples sound way more dark and to give them a lot of tension, which makes them sound more dark. And all I did was laying down these simple chords right here, as you can see. And for the first chord I just laid down this G sharp, C and D sharp, and this highest C just for like some like variation. Then I had this G sharp, B, D sharp, G sharp, which basically just goes down, but the root note stays the same and the D sharp stays the same as well. And then for the third chord I have this G, B, D and G, which just sounds really nice because I went from a G sharp to a G, and then again from a G sharp to a G, and from a D sharp to a D, which creates a lot of tension and makes the sample sound even darker. And then I just had this little transition right here with the G, B, C and D sharp just to transition into the next chord again. And as you can see, for the second part of the sample I have this D, D sharp and F, just because I wanted the sample to go up for some variation and that it sounds more dark. And that's a really nice way and really effective way to make your samples like sound more interesting, because as you can see, I didn't change the root notes from the sample, I just changed how the chords are sounding besides for the first chord, because as you can see I changed the B to a D and the D sharp to a G, and then this B to a D sharp and the D to a G, and obviously changed the D, D sharp and F, and then I transitioned it again for this chord, but as you can see I transitioned it down and I strummed them chords, which you can do with Alt and S, and I randomized the velocities to make it sound more natural, which you can do with Alt and R. And then I just added this little top line which I had from a harp, which I will show you later in this video, so make sure to stay till the end. And as you can see, the velocities are pretty low because I didn't want it to overlap with the harp, but I still wanted this top line to be in the bell pattern, and it sounds really nice. And now I will show you all the bell pattern and then show you all the effects for this bell, because the effects are really important for these type of samples. And first of all, the bell pattern is sounding like this. And now for the effects on this bell, I have this simple soothe on its hard setting and the depth to 6.2. Then this for the parametric EQ, where I just cut out some of the frequencies that I didn't really like. Then this simple Abbey Road vinyl, where I basically had it on the default preset, as you can see right here, but I turned down the noise, the crackle and the clicks. Then this simple RC20 just for the distortion, the magnetic and the EQ, it's on the vinyl 1 preset. Then this Valhalla vintage verb, where I tweaked the mix, the decay, the pre-delay and the low cut. And I had this EQ, where as you can see I cut out a lot of the lows and ducked some of the lower mids and mids, because they were like a little bit too harsh and I didn't want them to be as harsh, because as I said, I have like a harp which then would overlap with these frequencies, so I just cut them out and I ducked some of the highs just to make it sound a little bit more vintage. Then for the next thing I have this Luca no space phrase, which is out of the Exoplanet kit, so I'm telling y'all to get this because there's like a phrase for almost every type of sample, a one shot for every type of sample and everything else, so yeah, make sure to get that. The link is in the description. And as you can see I pitch it down by 2 just to bring it into the key of C, load the volume, put the mode to stretch and the declicker mode to generic, and the finished phrase is sounding like this. And for the effects on this phrase out of the exoplanet kit, I just have the simple EQ where I just cut out some of the lows. Then for the next thing I have this flute phrase which I recorded myself, which is pretty simple, and I can show you how I did this phrase real quick. But as you can see, I chopped it up a bit and I pitched this one up basically because I pitched the whole phrase down. So I pitched this up by 3 just because I wanted a little bit more variation, and this is just like a filler flute phrase for the intro. And as you can see, I had the declicker mode to generic, the mode to stretch, and then for the end just chopped it up again just for a little bit more variation, and the finished flute phrase is sounding like this. And for the effects I put on my flutes is this simple fruity parametric EQ where I just cut out a lot of the lows and lower mids. Then this simple RC20 just for the wobble and the EQ. Then this Valhalla vintage verb where I tweak the mix, the decay and the low cut. Then this fruity parametric EQ2 where I just cut out some frequencies that are like too harsh or like not necessary for the sample. Then this simple fresh air where I have the mid air to 42% and the high air to 41%. Then this simple soothe on its hard setting and the depth to 6.3. And I have a 23% in stereo. Then for the next thing I use contact and I use the grand harp bank. And I just left it on its default settings and laid down this pretty simple pattern, which is, as you can see, just this simple top line from the bell as I told y'all. Just that it sounds a little bit more full for the sample. And I randomized the velocities with Alt and R. I strummed it a bit as you can see right here. And the finished harp is sounding like this. And for the effects on this harp, I have this fruity parametric EQ where I just cut out some frequencies that were like not necessary. Then this fresh air where the mid air and the hi-hat to 31%. This simple soothe on its hard setting and the depth to 10.3. And I had this simple fruity parametric EQ where I just cut out some of the lows and low mids and some of the highs. Then for the second part of the sample, I have this vocal loop which is called like this. And I put the mode to stretch, put the declicker mode to generic and load the volume by a lot. And as you can see, it's an 8-bar loop and it's a pretty atmospheric loop as it says, and it fits the sample perfectly and it sounds like this. And then for the effects on this vocal loop, I have this reverb where I had it on its default settings. I just turned down the bass multiplier and I played with the wet, the decay and the stereo separation. Then this simple soothe on its default settings. This for the parametric EQ where, as you can see, I cut out a lot of the lows and low mids and some of the highs. And I had it 12% in stereo. And then for the next thing, I used the better bass out of the one-shot section in my exoplanet kit. And as you can see, I turned the sample start offset to 22% because the first sound didn't fit for this sample. Then I put the declicker mode to generic, the mode to resample like left it normal, and I turned the envelope like this. And then I just laid down this simple bassline on the root notes from the bell pattern, and I didn't change it up at all. I just randomized the velocities, and the finished bassline is sounding like this. And then for the effects on this bass, as always, I have this simple soothe with the hard setting and the depth to 9.1. Then this simple R compressor where the threshold to -14.5, the ratio to 1.64 and the gain to 4.4. Then this simple decapitator where I played with the drive, the tone and the style. This for the fast distortion where I had it on its default settings but I turned the mix to 35%. Then this for the parametric EQ where I just cut out some of the muddy lows and I had it 100% in mono. And now for the most important thing on my samples, I have this simple mastering chain which contains this Apex Vintage Exciter with the Dart Mix preset, then this Chroma Tape Stereo with the Mastering Clean and Open preset, this Every Vote Vinyl Stereo with the Creamy Strings preset, but I turned down the noise, the crackle and the clicks, this L1 limiter just to make it louder, and I had the threshold to -11.2 and the out ceiling to -3.0, then this Sound Shifter Pitch 0 from Waves where I pitched it up by 3, then this simple EQ where I just dug some of the lows and some of the highs just to make the sample sound even more vintage. And then I rendered the sample out, put the declicker mode to generic, put the mode to stretch, and I pitched it up by 1. And the finished sample is sounding like this. And now for the beat breakdown, the first thing I obviously did was dragging in the sample and I pitch it up by 1, put the declicker mode to generic, put the mode to stretch, and I put the trim knob to 100%. And as you can see, the sample was in 156 BPM, but I sped it up and put it to 170 BPM just because I liked how it sounded. And then for the first thing I did for the beat was laying down this pretty simple hi-hat pattern, which has like a few rolls, but it's pretty like spacey, I would say. And it's really that simple to make hi-hat patterns. Just pick this brush tool right here and like just click on the note so it's copied. Then you can just lay down pretty simple rolls, and you can even change the note length when you just basically pick like the 1/2 step, 1/3 step, 1/4 step. But for this example I picked the 1/6 beat because I just liked how it sounded and it just fitted the sample. But first of all, the hi-hat pattern is sounding like this. Then for the next thing I picked this pyrex clap, which is out of the Stash 2023, which is available on Lucaland right now. It's my own website where you can even find exoplanet as well. So yeah, make sure to check this out. The link for that is in the description. And I just went into the Stash and picked the clap 8 bass pattern and obviously then picked the pyrex clap. And that's all I did, and it sounds like this. Then for the next thing I picked this Luca quick light snare, which is out of a kit I'm working on right now. And I just laid down this pretty simple snare pattern, which with the hi-hat and the clap sounds like this. Then I had this Luca Sharp short open hat, which just layers the 1, 3, 5 and 7 for the 808 notes, and this Luca slide open hat, which just comes before the clap hits, which y'all will hear in a second. And it's two pretty simple patterns, which still sound like this. And then for the last and the most important thing, I have this 808 pattern, and I laid down the 808 notes on the root notes from the sample. And as you can see, I had like this little transition right here and a roll right there. And the finished 808 pattern with everything else, like with the sample, open hat, clap and everything else. So basically the finished beat is sounding like this. So yeah guys, if you all enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and to subscribe to my channel. It would really help me, and it would really mean a lot. And if you all haven't already, please make sure to check out the exoplanet kit. The link for that is in the description. And as I said, you even have a 15% discount code, which gives you like about $3 off. I would really appreciate any type of support on this kit. And if you all haven't already, please make sure to leave a like, to subscribe to the channel, to leave a comment. And thank you all for going so crazy on the last few videos and even on the exoplanet kit. So yeah, as I said, please make sure to check out my kit store. The link is in the description. And please don't forget to subscribe and to leave a comment on what y'all want to see next. And with that being said, yeah guys, see y'all.
Exoplanet out now.